Um, I need to apologize because I got so wrapped up in talking about Marcel, I kind of forgot to talk about the battle system that I made up. So I think that it's important that, you need to think about when you're actually in a fight is that there's a big difference between how Shadowhawk and Spawn fight. Shadowhawk is more nimble and quick. He's got a number of quick and light attacks. Most of the weapons that he can use are over the course of the games are things like like daggers and crossbows, so there's going to be some kind of crafting system in place so Shadowhawk can actually build his own weapons. Like, I think he should be able to have like dual crossbows, one on each arm, kind of built into his armor, like gauntlets, so it can be all like with his bolts, and those bolts can be like electrified or tipped with poison or explosives, like Garrett from Thief, which reminds me that I need to put some more thought into the lock-on targeting system, because obviously both Spawn and Shadowhawk will have distance attacks. Shadowhawk is essentially a rogue in terms of how he plays. He can run up real close and do a bunch of combos, or he can swiftly be dodging and getting up in people with kind of like rapid fire crossbows. Spawn, on the other hand, is more like a big magic tank. I think there's always been a couple of ways that people have pictured Spawn. Me, I always kind of like the Greg Capullo Spawn, who's kind of heavier set, a little bit beefier than some of the other artists drew him. So with that in mind, Spawn is like a mix between like a heavy warrior and a wizard. So he can just lay into people with his like big melee attacks, but also his necroplasm energy blasts, or if he needs, he can break people's defense with these big kind of like coming in and breaking defense. Spawn will also have a crafting system, whereas Shadowhawk is more about augmenting weapons with better mechanical parts. Spawn does more magic infusion, so like later in the game he gets a blunderbuss, which will have two modes. One is kind of basically like a magical magical shotgun, but he can also like hold it and like charge like a magical grenade launcher, and you can break through defense with that. So the only problems, of course, the classic problem with heavies is that they're slow. They get taken out pretty quick if you're not careful. So in other words, you need to balance Spawn's kind of heavy ability to do a lot of damage while moving slow around an enemy with Shadowhawk's ability to kind of like get up into people and like do a lot of So that's kind of the soul game of the game, is trying to figure out ways to kind of use these two unique characters with their different complements and weaknesses. So as you progress through the game, you'll unlock a number of dual attacks combos where they kind of combine their strength. If you played something like Xenoblade Chronicles, you probably have a good idea what all this means. One thing I'm kind of like toying around with is that there might be some like QuickTime events that like you sort of like start up using these like charging systems, like that are either going to be from enemies dropping energy nodules after they die, or maybe it's something that you build up with points during combos. I mean, neither is the most original idea, but I do think that having a bit of payoff during like the rote combat is a good way of making each fight feel a little bit more impactful. And the combat, it's going to be really bloody, and that's a big part of it. And I think that's one of the things that set the Image Comics apart from the other stuff back in the 90s, was they were willing to kind of be a little bit more violent. I don't want to go over the top with this stuff. I don't want to be like those new God of War games, which I think are a bit excessive. I get turned off by seeing like stretched skin and all that kind of thing. So okay, let's take some questions about the battle system. Let's go to the phones. Hello, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. We got having some problems with the phone. Let's go see what's going on with the chat. We got people, no melee weapons for the tank or for shields. So no melee weapons for the tank. Spawn's melee weapons are going to be his fists. I know that a lot of people feel like medieval Spawn had the people like the axe and the sword, but I really like, one of the things I like about that Greg Capullo Spawn, that kind of like ripped like wrestler-sized Spawn, is those just pounding Hulk-like attacks that he could potentially do in addition to the energy blasts. So that hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. we have some nanotubes. People want to know about nanotubes. Not sure what those are, but maybe if we're talking about like, magical infusion, nanotubes could be kind of like linked from spawns like necroplasm. Oh, you're on the air with electronic game information. Hold up, I'm just gonna talk about nanotubes for a little bit longer. Something like these tubes that maybe come out of spawns gauntlets and go into like a grenade. You throw. So you're on the air with electronic game information. Do you have any questions about the battle system?
Hi there. I had just a question about how you progress in the game, like if there's a level up system or if it's kind of like Bloodborne where you can choose the difficulty prior so the game can seem harder.
I feel like, I don't want to do the kind of thing where Bloodborne does where it's sort of like the game sort of levels up as you level up. I like that, the characters will become more and more like, extremely powerful. But, I do think that it's important to, have the different characters be sort of like locked into, attributes which kind of already complement what they are. So I don't think that Shadowhawk should be able to like level up so much that he's doing heavy attacks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions?
No, not really. I'm just wondering if, like Bloodborne, the difficulty, is it different between the two characters you can play as? Like if you choose.
Well, that's actually a great question, because what's going to happen is you're going to kind of be constantly like switching between the two. So if one character is, basically you'll control one character during combat, and then another character will be controlled by the AI, and the AI, coding should be pretty sophisticated, so you're not going to have to necessarily worry about that character, and they'll know when you're you're about to like do a dual attack.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your call.
That's all I have.
All right. Have a wonderful night. Do you have another person on the line with electronic game information? We're talking about the game I made up, talking about the battle system. I've gone over a couple of things about the game. We talked about Marcel. We talked about the battle system and some of the weapons that some of the characters can use.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about the aspect of the battle system that you were talking about before. It's like both real-time and turn-based at the same time.
Yeah.
And I know a couple of games that do something similar, but it's like, could you go a little bit more in depth?
So, like, if you picture, like, all right, so it's like if you have, so you walk up to an enemy and you start, you enter into combat. There's basically going to be sort of like a ring that ends up in the corner of the screen, like here, like a ring that'll have like the different, like if it's like a PlayStation controller, it'll be like the, the triangle, X, square, and circle, and those different ones will all have assigned like a specific attack. But like if it's once you're within the combat itself, you're just going to be automatically attacking, and those attacks will be those attacks and like how much damage you're giving and how much damage you're taking from your enemy are going to be kind of defined by the stats. But if you want to like instigate a combo or like a special like an uppercut for Shadowhawk or like a necroplasm blast for Spawn, those will be assigned to a button, but those buttons will need to recharge. So it's a little bit like Dragon Age Inquisition. Did you play Dragon Age Inquisition?
Oh no.
Oh, it's very instructive if you're trying to get kind of a better idea of what I'm talking about.
Right.
Thank you so much for your call. Hi, you're on the air with electronic game information. We're talking about the battle system. We had a lot of great questions. A lot of people want to know about this game. I think people are excited about this game. People are excited about the possibilities that it opens up for gaming as a whole and bringing back characters that I think a lot of people forgot about.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Well, what are you excited about? Give me an example of something that you're excited about.
I'm very excited to play as Spawn. His playstyle seems very interesting with the heavy.
So what do you like about Spawn? Now, here's a question. This is one of the first questions I ask people when I meet them, is if you like Spawn as a kind of like lithe, more a kind of acrobatic version of Spawn, almost like a Batman, or do you like Spawn as like the kind of heavier tank Spawn?
I mostly played games with Spawn and like the Dreamcast game and stuff, so mostly the heavier one.
Yeah. I mean, those like In the Demon's Hand, that's like a machine gun run around an arena with your friends game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I've thought a lot about when I was thinking about it. Kind of making up a game in my head is just like what's the best way to use these characters. Spawn in the Demon's Hand had a lot going for it, but it was really it was kind of like Outrigger, but with just like that heavy metal game, but with like different skins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was the Xbox one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean it's pretty good. That wasn't so bad. Wasn't like that the PlayStation one. That was a bad one.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Did you play the Super Nintendo one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting game. I don't think it I don't think it used Spawn quite in the right way, but I think it's an interesting game.
Well, that was a problem with a lot of like comic book games on the SNES.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, and that's why we're going back. We're going to try to fix all those problems that were created.
Well, good. Can I pre-order it?
Absolutely. Once it's been picked up, and once the funding is secured, we're going to have this thing up on all the platforms. I promise you.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for your call. Now we have time for one more call. Hello, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. Do you have any questions about the battle system or anything like that?
Is it okay to ask about DLC?
DLC is a great question. I tend to like games that are finished when they're released. Something like Octopath Traveler that didn't. They were right out of the gate just being like, there's not going to be any DLC. It's a complete finished package. But with all these characters and all these possibilities, I've noticed a lot of Switch games. You can play as Shovel Knight in them. That's like a character you can download. So
I was actually about to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm always trying to be a little bit flexible with DLC.
And will it be like Shovel Knight campaigns are free add-ons?
That's a very good point. The thing that really got me was passwords. When you could, in like the X-Wing game for the Nintendo 64, you could use passwords to unlock stuff like the Millennium Falcon or like a Naboo fighter or a boat or something.
Yeah, and the NES did it too for Legacy of the Wizard.
Absolutely. Well, so to me, it's like it's more interesting to have something hidden that people can kind of dig into and find than it is to just have some little package that people can pay for.
That's a good point.
That's just me.
And by the way, your Miles Edgeworth costume is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you so much. I really wasn't sure if it was the right fit for the time of year, but I think it works well.
I think you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your call. Thank you for your calls about the battle system and all these things. We've got now it's time for the list. Tonight's list is, of course, going to be possible names for the game that I made up. So let's dive right on in. You can call in during the list. You can give me your ideas for possible names for the game that I made up. But let's start with the names that I've come up with. One is Spawn and Shadowhawk, Dual Destinies. Another one is Dual Destinies, Spawn and Shadowhawk. The next one is The Wildlife of Spawn and Shadowhawk. Unbelievers, Spawn and Shadowhawk Believe. Spawn and Shadowhawk American Origins. The Villainy of the Violator, The Violations of the Vindicator, American Foundations, Malvosia Lost in Time, Lost in the Colonies, Spawn and Shadowhawk, Colonial Wanders, The Truth Behind the Creation of America, 1690 Spawn and Shadowhawk Discover America, Dual Wielding Spawn and Shadowhawk, and Regular Spawn with Old Gun. Weapon Lord 2, Colony Wars with Demon Wife, In the Woods, Gloomsbrook, the town that was in America in the 17th century, Philip's Lament, Two Unlikely Heroes in Upsetting Circumstances, The Child and the Hell Demon, American Origins, Fight the Future, In the Past, Spawn, Shadowhawk, and the Maps, Inventories, and QTEs, An American Legend, The Legend of Spawn and Shadowhawk, Friends Throughout Different Circumstances in Colonial America, 1690 America with 1993 Heroes, Legendary American History, The Time Is Now and The Time Is Dangerous, The Constitution of Death, and Hell with Spawn and Shadowhawk. The Life and Time, I'm seeing some in the chat here. People are coming up with Spawn and Shadowhawk Freedom Fighters, The Life and Times of Spawn and Shadowhawk. Demon Wife in the Woods, Spawn and Shadowhawk 1776. No, that's 18th century. We were in the 17th century. Demon Wife, it's a strong name, but I think, you know, maybe we'll Shadow Trapper. Oh, I like that one. Shadow Trapper is kind of like Shadow Warrior, the famous first-person shooter made by 3D Realms. You're not calling the game New Tech Slayer. We're not calling the game New Tech Slayer. Road to Gloomsbrook, starring Spawn and Shadowhawk. Let's write that one down. Road to Gloomsbrook. How about Colony Legends? Untold History. Spawn and Shadowhawk. Croatoan Apocalypse. Of course, the Croatoa was written on the tree in Roanoke. When the colony in Roanoke disappeared, they wrote Croatan on the tree. Hello, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. We're talking about the list. We're going down the list of possible games for the name for the game I made up. Do you have a name in mind?
Yeah, what about like Shadow Spawn?
Shadow Spawn.
Yeah, like Shadowhawk.
The Shadow Spawn and Shadowhawk and what else?
Yeah.
You got what's cool about Spawn and Shadowhawk is like Shadowhawk's got claws and Spawn's got claws, right? So we're doing like brainstorming here. We got like Shadowhawk and Spawn, claws in America.
Oh, claws in America, colonial claws.
Colonial claws, Shadowhawk and Spawn. We got it. We got a name for the. Name's going on the list. Name is going on the list. Colonial claws, Shadowhawk and Spawn. Thank you for your call. We got a next caller on the line. We're doing the list. We got people coming up with names for the game that I made up. Hi, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. You got a name for the game that I made up?
Oh, Robby, hi. Let me run out of this room real quick. I gotta tell you something. You have to just go with Spawn and Shadowhawk, colon Gloomsbrook.
Spawn and Shadowhawk Gloomsbrook. So to me that's a little simple. I mean, we got a lot of elements going into this thing. I think it's good to what about like Spawn and Shadowhawk Gloomsbrook and the fight against the woods and shipbuilding?
Spawn and Shadowhawk, Gloomsbrook Trials.
Gloomsbrook Trials. Who's on trial, though? Who's on trial? I mean, we've only met like a few people. Is there a judge in Gloomsbrook?
They're in like a narrative trial. They are putting their souls through this journey.
They're in the narrative trial. They're putting their souls through the journey. Gloomsbrook is a small town. There's no judge in Gloomsbrook, but hey, Gloomsbrook is a small town in colonial New England. Guess what's in the bigger towns?
Worse demons and worse creatures.
And judges. Because you got Salem, you got Boston, you got all the Salem witch trials. It's all going to get tied in together. This is the untold history of America. Thank you for your call. We got Spawn and Shadowhawk, Gloomsbrook Judgment Day. Cast of characters meets plot points. Hello, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. We're talking about the game that I made up. We're coming up with names for the game that I made up. Do you have a name in mind?
Yes, Spawn and Shadowhawk 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Spawn and Shadow, that's like a rhyme.
Yeah.
I don't think it really fits into the universe, but we're gonna just kind of keep that Spawn and Shadowhawk idea going. So Spawn and Shadowhawk colon, what goes after the colon? We got, they're in the woods, they're in New England, it's colonial America. We have, Spawn and Shadowhawk are two black superheroes. So what's that like?
Hey there.
Hi, you're on the air with Electronic Game Information. We're talking about possible names for the game I made up. We're kind of spitballing with the Spawn and Shadowhawk. We're like combining their universes, putting it into a different universe.
I got one.
Okay.
Spawn and Shadowhawk, Liberty for All.
Liberty for All. Oh, I love that. Liberty for All. Liberty for
Yeah,
all. But this is a little bit before the 18th century liberty movement. But I think we can, we can kind of picture maybe they get some sort of like thing that like they go to sleep for 100 years and Liberty for all when they wake up. It's Assassin's Creed. It's a Spawn meets Assassin's Creed 3. It's great. I love it. Thank you so much for your call.
Idea.
All right, we've got Spawn and Shadowhawk create America by fighting demons and possibly Cyberforce. Towns on maps, items in stores, Spawn and Shadowhawk, and possible online co-op. What do you got? You're on the air with Electronic Game Information. We got possible names for the game that I made up.
Yeah, how about Sunset Riders, A Blast from the Past?
Blast from the past, but they're from the future.
Well, then we should call it Apache Warrior, A Hawk's Death.
Apache Warrior, the Hawk's Guest? Like the Hawk is the guest?
Death.
Gas?
Death.
Sorry, you're not coming through too well. I think you're saying Apache Warrior, the Hawk's Guest.
Yes.
Now, I don't know a lot about Native American history. I know a lot less than I think I probably should. So I'm not sure if the Apaches were in that part of the world at that time.
What about Running Fish, A Love Story?
There's not going to be a love story in this. We already know a lot of complicated things with Shadowhawk. He's HIV positive, so his love story is I think that's something that we can come back to later, perhaps in kind of like some backstory about him. And Spawn is still in love with his wife from his previous life.
Okay, I got a good one then.
Okay.
Trapping and tapping.
Trapping and capping.
And tapping.
Capping.
Yep.
With the crossbows.
Yeah. Well, trapping and tapping. Marcel's French-Canadian adventure.
Marcel's French-Canadian. He's just a secondary story. But he could. Here's the. All right. So there's no bad ideas in shipbuilding. I mean brainstorming. But how about trapping and capping? It's like Betrayer meets Chrono Trigger. The End of Days.
That's pretty good.
Trapping and capping, The End of Days. Think we got something on the list? It's on the list?
That's pretty good.
On the list? All right, what's on the list? Thank you for your call. Next up, we got someone in the air. We're going to talk about possible names for the game that I made up.
I was thinking maybe like Spawn and Shadowhawk, Lost in Translation.
Lost in Translation. Spawn, Shadowhawk, Lost in Translation. So we're starting strong with the Spawn and Shadowhawk, Lost in Translation. Who are they translating to? Everybody's speaking English.
Oh, well, they find like something mysterious, like it's like lost in the bowels of American history.
So how about this? How about let me take a break for you right there. How about Spawn and Shadowhawk, something mysterious in they go after the colonial America.
Yeah, that sounds kind of cool, but it feels like we can shorten that up, like Spawn and Shadowhawk, Lost in America.
Lost in America?
Lost, maybe that,
Lost
yeah.
In America and question marks? How about Lost in question marks?
Yeah, so just actually even get rid of the Spawn and Shadowhawk part. Just have it Lost question marks.
Lost in America. I love it. Absolutely 100% on the list. Lost in America, Secret America, reasonable amounts of weapon augmentation. We got Gloomsbrook, a legend. Hello, you're on the line with Electronic Game Information. We're talking about titles for the game that I made up.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Spawn and Shadowhawk, Outlast Smallpox.
Outlast Smallpox.
Yep. Colonial America and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's what I'm thinking. Is you have, Far Cry 2, you get malaria, right?
Yeah.
So what if you got smallpox?
Oh, yeah.
In this game,
that
and you have
awesome.
So that's another thing that you're constantly having to craft. So you're constantly having to pick up little plants and craft what do you call them? Ampules.
Yeah.
So it's this ampule
or whatever.
Ampules. So it's Spawn and Shadowhawk. It's a legend. Colonial America, we're surrounded by woods and poison and monsters. This is a legend about a town with a lot of side quests. It's we're looking for ampules. Everybody has a story to tell, a secret to hide. And they're weirdly untroubled. They're weirdly untroubled by the arrival of Spawn and Shadowhawk.
Yeah. Why are they weirdly untroubled by that?
This is a question. This is the secret history of America. Thank you for your call. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the list.